Okay, we're waiting for you because this should be nice and quick because it's only you and I. Okay, I'll see you on screen. I just spoke with Dan. He'll be logging on in a minute. It should be pretty quick, Tony. I just wanted to have this meeting so I could have a conversation with him on the ordinance.
Okay, no problem. Can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hello, this is WRPS. I was told to give host control to Robin.
Robin won't be here tonight, so I'll take it.
Okay, all right, I'm just gonna make you host control. We're live on YouTube.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Mary. Okay. Daniel, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me? Dan, you're on
Ian
mute.
needs to unmute his microphone.
Dan, you're on mute. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, this should be short and sweet where it's just us. Let me get through the preliminaries here. I want to welcome everyone to an open meeting of the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners. This is a special meeting held tonight because I wanted to speak about a few things in the ordinance. This meeting is broadcast live on www.youtube.com/WRPS Rockland and being recorded by WRPS. With that, Dan, I'll take a motion to open the meeting.
I make the motion.
Okay, I will second that. Mr. Ross, how do you vote? Yes, to open?
Yes, I do.
And I'm a yes, that's an affirmative. Just a couple quick things, Dan, so you're up to speed of what's going on. I called Rich Harris on the Capital Planning Group, and I'm going to be on the agenda next Thursday night. I'm going to try to plead our case for some more funding from the undesignated funds. If nothing else, I'm going to give them a detailed chronological breakdown on how the sewer department got into this pickle. Not to point the fingers, but so they understand that this wasn't something that just occurred yesterday, that it's been ongoing and it's to a breakback point now. Now, what I need to know, you don't have to tell me tonight, but if you would like to attend, there's no problem with doing so. It's not just for department heads, I found out. But if you want to go, I have to post it as a public meeting for the sewer commissioners, as a joint meeting, I guess. But you don't have to let me know tonight. Let me know Monday. If you watch on WRPS and don't kick in, I imagine it's not considered a meeting. For those of you who are going to be watching this later, I want to remind everyone on our meeting the 24th, Wright Pierce will be giving a brief overview of the Cwmp project. And this project will have the biggest impact on this department than any other study the sewer department's undertaken. Because of time constraints and a long agenda that night, I'm going to open questions to the public for 15 minutes. But anything you'd like to have asked beforehand, if you could submit them to email my attention at the sewer department by next Friday, I'll do what I can to get a response. If you would like to just ask them that night, I'm going to ask you to keep them brief and to the point. Now, as I said, the reason for this special meeting is for the commissioners to discuss, and Ms. Valley, who's a potential candidate, to be aware. What my intention is to do, I'd like to see us clean up some loose ends on the permitting process. It is very ambiguous in my opinion, and with the moratorium in place, I think it's imperative that we have a structured paper trail on what and what we are not going to do, or how we're going to go about doing business. We have a strict moratorium that went into effect July 1st of 2021. There are permit holders that were approved prior to that date, and I'd like to find a way to accommodate those people without financially punishing them because of their investment. But it's going to be with conditions and a very clear path to the future on how future applicants get on the permit waiting list. So as it sits right now in the ordinance, and it's never been enforced. I've seen it stay open for 3 years, but the ordinance says buried in it that you have 2 years, the permit is good. There are certain developments that are ongoing that if that were the case, I mean, that permit would have been still in place. But what I want to do is I want to tighten that up, and I'll get into it real quick. Now, Dan, what I'm looking for is, even if you have nothing to say tonight, I will give you a copy of my notes because I'm going to put them up and they'll be public record. But I want you to really think about these. What I'd like to do is try to tighten it up by the next meeting in the 24th. That and anything we want to do to tweak the moratorium. Because in the moratorium, we said would review it in April and September. I want to stick to those guidelines. But I want to have everything in place as of April, especially with a new person coming on board. So with that, I'm going to share the screen. Get my keyboard here. Okay, what I want to do is start with the ordinance in 2.1, and I was focusing on the new connections. The first one, it just said anyone proposing an extension of the sewer system shall notify the commission, and it's at least 45 days prior. What I want to do is I want to change that to be a preliminary technical review. And I want to reference the Form K, which was being kicked around as a starting point. And what I'm putting in red is what I would like that ordinance to read. And Sherry, I'd like you to, keep and you to opine on this as well, should you get into office in April. What I'm saying is it's going to be, let's just have that as a technical review. And that's when the Form K comes out, which I'll show you later. And that's where any applicant proposing to connect to the sewer system, be a resident, business, commercial, they got to submit a preliminary stamp plan and specifications with their intentions 45 days at a minimum prior to the application process for a technical review. That technical review is when we get into the permit, really hear what they want to do and whether we can accommodate them or not. And when I'm saying that form is issued by the Rockland Planning Board when people first come to them. Maybe I'll put it up now and show it to you. This is it here. And if you look down here, can you guys see that? Dan,
No,
you see it?
we're still on the same page.
If you don't see this, okay, wait a minute. Okay, let me close this down. Can you see it now? Where's
No.
this Form K?
No, it's the same page.
Same page.
Okay, well, I'm gonna give up on that then. What the Form K is a document that planning board issued, and one of the sign-offs was from the sewer commission. Well, I've been on this board 5 years and I've never seen that form. And I think what it was doing is going to the superintendents, and they were saying, yeah, it's okay, it meets all the criteria, and putting it on, and again, I'm not putting words in Dave's mouth because these were other superintendents prior to him. Because I don't think he's seen one currently yes, he has, but I think at that point, this Form K, if it's gonna go to the superintendent, it should say superintendent. And all he should be able to do is say, yes, the department has the capacity, and yes or no, the technical specs meet the minimum criteria of what we would want. So I'm gonna say no paperwork will be accepted without this package being complete. When it comes to us, for the review, that's to me when the clock starts ticking. When we get the final prints, we get the technical specs on the system. We find out, has it been to Concom? Do they have any issues? Has it been to DEP? Do they have any issues? Whatever. But that to me is when the clock should start ticking. And I think we have to change this first section to reflect that. The second one, and this is where I really had a concern, because if you read it, where any proponent that proposes additional flow to the sewer system greater than 404 gallons must remove 11 gallons of infiltration. But the key in there is a statement that says, while maintaining the flow rate to the wastewater treatment plant at or below the permitted capacity as regulated by our NIPD's permits. The sources of I&I are identified in the SSE studies. What I don't like is the word it says, at the town may at its sole discretion, and Tony, you may want to, this may where I wanted you involved, that the town may at its sole discretion allow the proponent to pay a one-time fee to the town in lieu of waiting for I&I sources to become available for the proponent to remove. Now, currently the fee is $20 a gallon. The town may allow this fee to be performed the work necessary to comply with the 11-to-1 reduction rate. Now, my interpretation of my NIPD's permit, I'm pretty good with the regs. Rockland submitted corrective actions to the administrative order back in 2006. We proposed the corrective actions. We proposed this 11-to-1 and we've never adhered to it. The EPA and Mass DEP both accepted that. So I'm looking at it, it's not an arbitrary figure. And it is in our regulation, in our ordinance. So I want to eliminate the verbiage of in lieu of waiting. And I wanted to read, the flow capacity must exist at the time of application for all new connections to the Rockland system. All applicants, residential, large developments, institutional, business, commercial, and municipal must pay a one-time development fee to the Rockland Sewer Department that will be placed directly into the inflow and infiltration account and will be applied to the elimination of any I&I sources identified by the town of Rockland Sewer Department. Tony, do you see any problems with that statement?
No, I think you can do that.
Okay. Dan, that's a key I really want you to look at. I mean, right now, I'm going to look at it as if I was a developer, and I'm going to say, well, you said I can pay you X amount of money, even if your capacity doesn't exist. So I'm giving you the money, you go find the I&I. Well, I think what was happening is we all know what was happening. They were taking the money and they were forced to use it in repairs and never chasing the I&I. So now we're so far behind the 8 ball, it's not funny. I want to take out any verbiage that says in lieu of and make it mandatory that they pay a development fee. Because if we take out the lieu of, I'm afraid they'll say, well, we don't have to pay that development fee then. So I really, really would like you to look into that and read it. And if I'm wrong, if you interpret, or Sherry, if you interpret, you get elected and you interpret it differently, please let me know. Please voice your opinion. The next one is, what's that going on D1? Okay, that refers to that Form K. If they're going to use this Form K and it's going to be submitted to the sewer department, I would prefer that we do look at it, but we look at it in an open meeting in the entire Board of Commissioners. To be approved or disapproved, the superintendent can recommend to us, say, this came in. I think we have the capacity. You'd have to check with Rick, of course, and Ed, and say, yeah, you know what, guys, it meets our preliminary standard. And we could say, okay, let them proceed and let them make an appointment to come in and see us, just as we get an advance heads up. Because of the way it worked in the past, and since I've been on the board, we'd get an application for a new connection and they wanted it voted on that night. A lot of times I had to fight to get this just to see the prints. We weren't seeing the prints. So I want to take that out of the time frame. I mean, we have it in there with a specific time frame, and I want these developers, I want to work with them, but I want them to meet these deadlines. Am I making sense so far, Dan?
Yes,
Am I going too quick?
no,
Mary, since you're Mary, you and Sherry are the only two on there. If you want to kick in briefly, there's an open meeting, do so.
Okay, I'm fine so far.
Okay, Sherry?
That's good.
Okay, now what I want to go to do is D2E. It says, I'm going to go jump over my He says, if a permit is issued, it should be valid for no more than 30 days for date of issue. This is, I don't understand this, because if you read into the regulations, technically, I think it was in section 5, they have 2 years for that permit to be valid. So we got to clarify this somehow. I mean, should we include institutional CD4 or 4 categories? Should this be discussed as apply longer? Does this apply to residential, which would make sense to me if it's 4 units or less? Because these are the people we can't punish. These are the people that should be allowed to hook up. Their flow is not going to kill us. But see what I'm getting at? To me, this is too ambiguous. What does it mean? And if you keep going through, it gets more confusing to me. What I would like to see suggested is that a review in 6 months. If they're not doing anything, say, okay, where are you? Come to us. But I would suggest that the resident application was the 4 units have 6 months to get implemented. Large projects, which would be residential 4 months or larger, would have no more than 9 months to begin construction, but at a max 1 year. Currently, it's 2 years. But from my experience being on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and from what I've seen, designs change. And if we grant them a permit and they change, they're expecting that permit to still stand. Well, does it change your flow? Does it change the volume? That's what we got to look at. And this is what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to say in 3, okay, new single residence, okay, we'll give you 30 business days for review once your paperwork comes in. I don't see any reason to change that. A single unit could come in, it's not complex like a shingle mill or what have you. You go to D4, large developments, institutional, industrial, large, new main. It says it right in the regulations that they have to give us 60 business days to review the project. These people are coming in and almost demanding approval that night. To me, that's nuts. I mean, I want to do due diligence. I want to look. I don't want to make a decision one night and then go through it and find out, geez, is it in zone A? Is it, geez, did I miss something on the connection? I overthink these things. And that's why I'm asking you and Sherry and Mary, if you want to kick in. I second guess everything. And I don't want any loopholes to get around this, because this moratorium is going to hurt the town. It's going to hurt us at the sewer department. So we've got to be careful, and we've got to make sure everything is covered. And again, I see no reason to change this. I think 60 business days for a large project review is fair. Now, here's the one that I overlooked. I saw it in the past, and again, it's like any other one. You see a ton of regulations, you can't memorize everything, and I forgot about it. And it didn't dawn on me until I was getting ready to write a letter to Bob Galvin regarding another project. And I said, geez, I wonder if that is in a zone A. Then I said, oh, wait a minute. I remembered there was a zone 1 and the zone A reference, and I went back, and sure enough, it was there. And this is, I believe we do not have the authority to do this. And I think to avoid any more confusion, like what transpired the other night, it's cut and dried. Sewer connections in the zone 1 of a public water supply well or a zone A of a public surface water is prohibited. We didn't make that regulation up. The regulators did. But this may, in the case of like a shingle mill, be even more confusing. Just say they find out they're not in a public water supply with the reservoir, but they're putting in a drinking well. Could that play into effect? Again, this is me just overthinking things. Now, there is also one in D4F that says any project requires review by the Board of Selectmen shall be considered by approval. I want to add by the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners only after such a review by the selectmen are completed. The Board of Sewer Commissioners are the only board that could grant approval for a sewer permit. No one else. Chuck, you agree? Yeah, sure do. Okay, guys, kick in if you feel free.
I agree with you.
Okay. And you don't have to agree tonight because we're not taking a vote. What we're doing is I'm giving you my thoughts. Remember that. So if you got things, say, Chuck, I was thinking about it. I would like to see it this way. We're wide open. This is not going to be voted on until April. The reason I put this down, sewer construction, was primarily for Dave. He was saying something, if we go to a grinder, we could go to a 2-inch line coming out of a home. Well, right now, as far as I know, the industry standard for a lateral is 6-inch diameter. To me, you go down to a 2-inch, even if it's going into an 8-inch, you could lead yourself up to a clog, especially with people putting their wipes. We got a damn good ordinance that Dave came up with last time around with putting in a grinder system, which is going to take a lot of pressure off of Rick and the guys. And I think those are great ideas, but I think leave the construction to the industry standard. I believe it's standard practice. But what is not in there, and I could not find, is that the regulations call for an inspection by the superintendent of the final connections. I want to see a form created that goes into the file that says, okay, that's been inspected. I want it done by the owner, the drain layer, and the superintendent. Because if you go back, one of the conditions I had placed on Shingle Mill, and I worked with Bob on them, and after, again, overthinking, I came up with 2 more. Pipe shift, things move, harmonics, the ground, plot, what have you. I had put in a condition that they go back in and videotape that after 5 and 10 years. And after 5 and 10 years, if all the connections of sound, would remove it. But going back on that, there's no initial inspection form at all. So I want to create one. So I guess in bottom line is that I'm asking Dan and Sherry, if you're the only one, please don't hesitate to make suggestions. The public, you go on Facebook, everyone's got opinions. Well, if they don't voice them in our meeting, silence is acceptance. Proponent for connection should be on the waiting list. Now, here's what I want to get into is an applicant can only get onto a waiting list for a new permit only after the Board of Commissioners have reviewed the stamp plans in the appropriate timelines and all the requirements are spelled out in the ordinance. A Form K alone, as they're doing now, with what's not seeing the prints, we don't know that project is on the board until we see the prints. So the Form K is not to be considered a placement on the prints. I'd like to see it. I'd like to have a sign off on it. At least we know it's in the pipeline, but it's not a guaranteed spot on the waiting list. Because we do have one project now that I think is going to be a real problem. So what I'm looking for, these bullets, and where I put these up, Mary, Sherry, I can share them with you now that they're public record probably after tomorrow. That I'm going to say that I don't want to see any deviations in the schedule once we're set. Once we establish this clear length of time that you're on that list without connection is 1 year. We need to enforce the plans for ordinance for conditions. Project changes. If you change that plan, you got to notify us, and we got 60 days to act on it. But your 1 year clock is running. And again, to reason I'm being such a nitpicker on this, and I think the 3 of you realize it, and Tony, I think you do too. But I don't think that people really have a grasp on this. This ordinance is just that. It's a moratorium. And I'm going to tell you today, I know for a fact, we are at 4.1 million gallons a day for daily discharge. Our limit is 2.5. The EPA wants us to respond if we're over 80%, which is 2.0. So once we clear off this approved backlog, I think it's highly unlikely that Rockland's going to see another approved sewer permit for a year or more until we get this down per the moratorium. Now, what that means is that there's no revenue coming in. If there's no revenue coming in, we just had a rate increase. We have a rate study out there. And when the CWMP is done, you're going to take those two documents. And that CWMP is going to tell you, is going to look out 30 years and say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's the money you're going to need for that 30 years. The rate study is going to go, here's where you are now. They're going to take that CWMP and blend it into that rate study. And I'm a poor taxpayer too. This is going to be real sticker shock. And I need the people to understand that this problem did not happen overnight. It took 18 years to manifest itself. And to me, we're the first board in place that's trying to do anything to correct it. I think if they go back to business as usual about taking the developer's money and then chasing the I&I, to me, that's just the perfect example of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. Our infrastructure is garbage. So approvals prior to 7/21 should be notified that once we change this ordinance, they've got 6 months from the date of these changes once they're voted to start moving on your new connection, or the moratorium is going to be placed on them too. I think that's as fair as we can get. The moratorium was approved, and what I'm saying is that even with their approval, pre-approved, I have a real problem with telling them to go ahead now until we hit 2.5 million gallons a day rolling average. I have to run some numbers, and it may just say, okay, you know what? It's better off letting them in because I think the total flow is an additional 25,000 gallons a day. At this point, the 4.1 doesn't really make a difference. No, we get the revenue because they've been approved, but that moratorium is etched in stone. There's no going back. And I am adamant on this unless you guys overrule it, that there'll be absolutely no new permit connections issued until that available capacity exists in the system and meets all the moratorium requirements. Now, just to put that into a number, that means if you come to the sewer commissioners and your application says you need 5,000 gallons a day, that means 55,000 gallons has to be available to be issued. That's the 11-to-1 ratio. So if you have something at 5,000 gallons a day, we have to have 55,000 gallons available. Now, again, put it in perspective. What happens if we get a real large development? Let's take a shingle mill or what they're looking at potentially on Park Street. 40,000 gallons a day, do the math. That's 424,000 gallons of I&I that has to be available. And again, if we were doing this back in 2004, and I go to that date because I found some court testimony by Aquarion, who are our operators before Suez, testified in court at that lawsuit, stated that at that time, the sewer department was 200,000 gallons a day over capacity. That was in 2004. And we haven't spent I think we did a quick analysis for the EPA when we submitted our paperwork. And it broke down that Rockland's removed about 33,000 gallons a day, 33 gallons a year of I&I since the last 15 years. At least that's what Dave told the capital planning group last year. 500,000 gallons equates to over 15 years is 33,000. And we all know what the SSES study said. Now, the new connections before July 1st, the moratorium of future connections must meet current design specs of the laterals with the grinder station. The grinder station was put in last year before the moratorium. So you know what, if we're allowing you to connect, whether or not that was a condition at the time, that has since been made a condition. You've not done anything on your permit. You want your permit. Here's what we want. We want the grinder station. That's fair. That's quid pro quo. That to me is not a no-brainer. They should have no qualms about that. And again, if you feel I'm being harsh, please tell me. Now, here's another kicker that I think is going to be a problem in town. And you can see where my cursor is. Any and all meetings related to potential sewer connections to the Rockland sewer system with developers of large projects. Large projects, I'm looking at 4 residential units or more, business, industrial, commercial, all right, and I'm going to put in institutional, must take place at an open meeting with the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners or with an elected member of the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners delegated by a majority vote of our board. They got to be present at that meeting without exception. And I want minutes of that meeting. Now this, you may want to make exceptions to or make comments on. I don't think that's going to go over well. Personally, I don't care. I mean, the sewer department should not know after the fact of what's being talked about sewer. So again, please keep that in mind. The Zone 1 and Zone A, no discussion on that. And the only way we should waive that, put it right in there, is well, Mass DEP or your EPA approval. I'm putting this in only for discussion with Dave and the future superintendent. They do not have the authority to issue sewer permits connections. Dave realizes that, the sewer commissioners, sewer superintendent up to the last one realized that. And to me, the sewer superintendent can only state on the Form K, do we have the flow available? And does the design meet the proposed standards? And meet all the criteria in Section 2, 2.6 construction. And to tie it up, I want to change the date on this as February 2011. Excuse me, I want to complete that addendum page. It's on page 71. Sign it, publish it. And Mary, you'd know better than any of us. Does that have to be approved at a town meeting? Hello, Mary.
So I was actually going to bring that point up. So if it's rules and regulation, I know it's called an ordinance, but if these are really rules and regulations, this doesn't have to be done at town meeting. Bob and I today was looking around in the town ordinance and we didn't see this. So even though it's called an ordinance, it might be just rule and regulation where all you folks have to do is vote on it. But if it is actually an ordinance, then it would have to be voted on by a town meeting. I guess I don't know the answer to that yet, but we didn't find anything in the town ordinances that when we were looking around. So I guess the tip would be if it's a rule and regulation, you should probably change it from ordinance to rule and regulation so it's clear. And if that's actually the case, then you don't have to go through town meeting to do any of this.
Okay, then Tony, that's really why I wanted Bob here or yourself. What are the pitfalls? I'm a developer. The board voted, turned me down because of this ordinance. I don't like it. Now in there, it says they can appeal to us and we're still the final word. But would this stand up in court?
Yeah, the rules and regulations are enforceable. You can't get around them unless they're, burdensome or illegal. Bob and I both talked about this today, and we don't see anything legally wrong with what you're trying to do. We're not, technical experts on sewers, so you might want to clear that with somebody to make sure that this is all, technically possible. I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know because it's not our purview. But Yeah, generally, as long as the rules, if there are rules and regulations and they're in effect, and you treat every applicant the same, yeah, they hold up in court.
Okay, see, that's where you lost me. You said an ordinance is a rule and regulation, but it does not have to be voted at town meeting. We can enforce this as a board.
Yeah, the board can enforce its own rules. I think the issue is just it's a title problem. It's not a substance problem. If this is not an actual ordinance, and this is just rules and regulations for the sewer, then you should change the name of it to that.
Okay, so you're suggesting I change it from ordinance to rules and regulations?
Unless the original ordinance was voted in at a town meeting, but we didn't find anything that showed that. Maybe
Oh, all I have is well, I have a blank sign-off sheet. If you look at, I don't know if you have the ordinance. It's on section 16, page 71. And it says, revised, passed, and adopted at a duly authorized meeting of the Board of Sewer Commissioners, Town of Rockland, held on this date, 10th of February, 2011.
Right. So then that would really mean that these are the board's rules and regulations, which people still have to follow and, are still enforceable. And if people don't like them and try to challenge them in court, courts uphold the rules and regulations. I would just change the title from sewer ordinance to sewer rules and regulations, because ordinance, that word, makes it look like it's something that should or may have or might have to be passed a town meeting, which.
Okay, well, here, I'll give you this, then. I need you to look at on our, not tonight, all right?
Yeah.
On our sewer ordinance, go to that page 71 under section 16, effective date. Item B says, and I want to read it to you. Any rules and regulations consistent with this ordinance may be adopted and or amended by the board in conformance with section 10, chapter 83 of the general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait till I hear from you or Bob. Yeah, you or Bob to just say, Chuck, you're fine. You want me to give you that again?
No, I have it. I'm just reading it. I already have it. I have it pulled up.
Oh, you have section 10 already?
Yeah.
Thank God, you're good. No wonder.
Okay,
you're
Chuck. Chuck, the zone 1 and zone A remain in effect unless written approval from MADEP and the US EPA. I think you got to take that out of there, because that has a whole set of rules and regulations that are from the state and EPA in them. And then they don't go back and forth. Okay, you can do this, and then tell someone else they can't do that.
Oh, no, I understand that, Mary, but I just want to make sure that they're not coming back to me and saying, I want them to, if they want to change it, you go negotiate with them. I'm not. But I'll take that out of there. Like I said, and don't take this wrong way. I'm trying to make this idiot proof. I just don't want anyone coming back on the board.
So, so Chuck, basically what section 10 says, it just gives you basically a list of topics of what the board can prescribe in their own rules and regulations. And it's, it basically says you can regulate the use of sewers to prevent the entrance or discharge of any substance which may interfere with the flow of sewage or proper operation of sewage, the treatment and disposal for connection of estates and buildings with sewers, and for construction, alteration, and use of all connections entering into such sewers, and for inspection of all materials. And then it has other stuff like you can include civil penalties not exceeding $5,000 if people violate these things. But
yeah, that's in there.
All the stuff we talked about tonight, like, really falls under those like pretty broad categories. So that's all you had to comply with. You couldn't just. So what it means to comply with that section just means that you have to keep it, on relevant topics and not, and the sewer commission also requires you to put in brand new sidewalks and stuff like that, which is not relevant to the authority. So that's all that really means. So you're good under what section 10 says, all the stuff you added in to this.
Okay, I'll take that as a yes. Now, to keep things kosher, do you think you should sign it? I mean, when I say you, I mean, Bob sign it, that he's reviewed it, or no? I don't think it's necessary.
It's not required. I know on occasion I see things where it's approved by town council or in the, it's definitely not a requirement, but like I said before, and then now I'm just reading section 10, I don't think there's anything, there's no legal issue. And now that we've determined that the board can just vote on it rather than go to town meeting, you know, that's fine too. I just, you might want to run it by someone, I don't know, with technical experience, just to make sure that it's all consistent and doesn't cause any issues. I'm not saying it does. I just don't know. I mean,
No, as far as the technical, I'm comfortable with my.
okay, then that's fine. And that's, I mean, that's completely up to you as well. I just don't want anyone to misinterpret my sign off on it as a technical sign off.
No,
I'm the last person you want giving one of those on a situation like this, but I can tell you what's legally allowed.
Okay, no, like I said, Tony, I just want to make sure that I think there's been stuff in here that has tripped them up in the past, and I just want to I'm trying to take all that out.
Yep.
All I want to do is I want to be absolutely consistent with everybody.
Yep. So that all seems fine.
What else did I have on this? I guess, Dan, do you have any other questions, Sherry, or that you guys can read up on? And if you got anything in the interim, send me a quick, not you, Dan, because you're a board member. Sherry, until you're elected, if you got something that you want, that you've got a question on, feel free to text me or email me. Dan, if you do, go through Robin to get to me. The next item that I wanted to bring up was the moratorium modification discussion. And I think we basically had that. What I wanted to do is make sure those people that we have approved before that moratorium went into effect December don't get hurt financially with their investment any further than they already have. But I'm going to give them 6 months to make a decision if they're going to act on it. Superintendent search update. We received a total of 3 so far. One of them looks very good. Well, 2 of them look very good. And what I want to do is schedule them for interviews after the board is complete in April. I'll probably start that the last week of it in April, interviewing them. Now, what you have to do is we have to ask each candidate the same questions. We can't deviate from those questions. I will send out to you, Sherry, once you're on board, if you get elected. And Dan, I'll have Stacy Callahan send you out a copy of the first and second interview questions. We don't have to use those. We can change them around. Now, one of the other things two other things I was thinking of, and I want to be open with everybody. Where the response has been so light, everyone knows the job market, why it's so light, I don't know. 2 things I was thinking of as one, I want to review the Suez contract. Is there an option in there that we could have them do it, operate and manage the place soup to nuts? The court's still reporting to the Board of Commissioners. That I have to run by legal, and I have a copy of the contract. Dan, I had a copy sent to you today too as well. I want to read through that to see if we pursue that. That will be by vote. That won't be by my decision alone, but it's just something else I'm thinking of. The other thing is basically because of the last situation. I think right now, the last superintendent was hired as an employee at will. Now, remember, under section 40N, the superintendent and the sewer department employees report to the Board of Sewer Commissioners, but they are still town employees, and naturally with all the rights and do whatever. But I'm wondering if we're better off, and if that would make the superintendent more responsive to the commissioners if we went back into a 5-year contract, maybe a 1-year probationary period with a 5-year contract with a 1-year probationary period. That's something I think you should think of. Town Hall wants to do away with that and make them employees that will. But you do that, and I'm thinking, okay, the superintendent. I'm the superintendent. Who do I report to? Do I report to the town administrator, or do I really report to the town administrator? Or do I report to the Board of Sewer Commissioners? You know, I have contacted the Attorney General's office about the possibility of running an in-house seminar, much like they do in the open meeting law, on section 40N of the, let me read it to you. I know what it's called. It's under the Massachusetts General Law, Part I, 40N, Model Water and Sewer Commissions, powers, purpose, and responsibilities. Now, what I'm going to be doing is giving a copy of this to Robin, and I'm going to have 9 copies bound. I think it's just good to have down there for reference for Robin, Dave, or the superintendent, Rick, Ed, and John Mongi, the Suez regional manager, because an instance came up, and I'll address that the 24th that I wasn't too happy. I found out about, and I think it's basically a breakdown, and or maybe hopefully it's a misunderstanding of responsibilities. So, you know, these are just things I can't talk to you about on the phone or text. As chairman, I want you to know how I'm thinking. I want you to know that by no means am I telling you this is the way it is. You know what I mean? I just want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable, and as well as the superintendent, voicing their feelings. But the bottom line comes down to is the Board of Sewer Commissioners is the end all say all. We make the final word on permits in the department. And again, I'm not being one to say I'm a control freak, but if you go back into that case versus Rockland, when that sewer scandal in 2004, the Sewer Commission was cited. I think I have it right here. The Sewer Commission was cited for failure to supervise the superintendent and the department appropriately. I mean, he came right out and said it. I've been accused of interfering with the department. I don't consider anything I've done as interference, excepting voicing an opinion. The status quo went by for 17 years, and look where it got us. No one asked questions. And again, I'm not trying to run the department, but I am going to ask questions. And I think we have the authority, if we don't like a practice, to stop it and until it meets our satisfaction. I mean, the water and sewer departments are really the only true departments to report to the voters. And I'd like to see that continue. Someday down the road, is the DPW or the works? I would think it would be, but I don't see until we dig out of this hole we're in now. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry I took up all your time. I'm sorry I did all the babbling. Sherry, until you get sworn in, I'll talk to you anytime you want. If there's anything you need, just feel free to reach out. Dan, if you got any questions on this or the ordinance, or if you want to add or subtract anything, go through Robin and have her contact me. With that said, Dan, if you want to make a motion to end the meeting.
Motion to end the meeting.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, people, thank you very much for showing up. And if
You're welcome.
But tell people out there that it's not be surprising at sticker shot and with their rates, they better start paying attention to these meetings, because that is going to be being discussed, and they have to understand why. No revenue coming in. With that, good night. Have a good night.
Hey, Chuck.
Thank you,
Have a
Chuck.
good night. Good night.
Thank you.
You too.